I'm Luke Story. For the past 22 years, I've been relentlessly committed to my deepest passion, designing the ultimate lifestyle based on the most powerful principles of spirituality, health, psychology, and personal development. The Lifestylist Podcast is a show dedicated to sharing my discoveries and the experts behind them with you. If you are a discerning health enthusiast like myself and you want the best of the best, chances are that you've probably sat there and scratched your head at the health food store trying to figure out which CBD product to buy, right? I mean, this has happened to me on multiple occasions. They all make these claims, it does this, it does that, et cetera, et cetera. Everyone says they're the best. Who is actually the best? What actually works? Well, I found something recently that I'm super stoked about. It's called Onda. Now, Onda offers a patented, truly full-spectrum line of products and bulk oil, actually, that's not dependent on the use of alcohol, CO2, or other solvents for extraction. And their CBD is organically grown and produced in the USA. Now, here's the thing when you take a plant that has medicinal qualities like the hemp or the cannabis plant, right? And you start stripping away all of the terpenes and all of the cofactors that make it really a holistic, natural medicine, you end up with something close to a pharmaceutical, right? Now, some pharmaceuticals are great in a pinch when everything else has failed, but when it comes to a natural product like CBD oil, you really want the full spectrum of the plant, and you don't want a bunch of junk in there when they got the extraction done, right? In other words, when they get the medicine out of the plant, you don't want to be adding poisons to it. So that's why I'm super stoked on Onda. I've been using it for a couple months, and I got to tell you, I don't have time to go into the benefits, and there's legalities, but this product has been amazing for sleep, anxiety, stress. I'm super into it. How you can get your hands on some is as follows. Go to ondawellness.com. That's O-N-D-A, ondawellness.com. And what's really exciting is that if you use the code Luke15, you'll save 15% off. That's Onda Wellness, and the discount code is Luke15. Go get your CBD on. This episode of the Lifestylist Podcast was recorded on location at Cuixmala in Mexico. Our guest today is Alix Goldsmith Marcaccini, who's the owner of Cuixmala and their amazing and beautiful sister property, Hacienda de San Antonio, also in Mexico. Both of these properties proclaim a continuous commitment to sustainability and the environment, and also supporting the local wildlife as well as communities. And this is why I couldn't wait to get down there and do a report on it, because I love supporting businesses that are doing things consciously. And Alix, alongside with their husband, certainly are. They protect and manage the 25,000 acre Biosphere Reserve, including biodynamic farms, the hospitality team, a bilingual school, and the Cuixmala Ecological Foundation and its live-in biologists. It's an absolutely fascinating operation that they run there. And I got to sit firsthand for a week and check it all out. It's just absolutely incredible. So what you're going to learn in this episode is not only all about these properties and how they operate and the fascinating history of Alix and her family, but also starting out with the story of how Alix and I met upside down in a totaled car on the side of a country road in Costa Rica at the end of 4 ayahuasca ceremonies. So we met in a very sort of tragic yet auspicious way, and we've become fast friends. So I'm really excited to tell that story and the story of Alix, her life, and the life of these wonderful properties that I had the opportunity to visit. We're also going to talk about Sir James Goldsmith, her father, and his astounding ecological efforts way early on in the scene, and his confrontational relationship with the media. Then we're going to talk about transitioning from an organic to biodynamic farm scenario. And I got to visit the farms while I was there, interact with the animals, the plants, and talk to the farmers themselves. And it is a fascinating way to create food. And not only that, it's a fascinating way to eat food. The food there was so ridiculously good. And the biodynamic farming had a lot to do with it. So we take a deep dive into that whole process and why she decided to transition those properties and make them actually self-supporting as well. So between the two properties, the meat, the dairy, the coffee, all of that comes from Hacienda de San Antonio, the other sister property up in the mountains. And then all of the fruits, vegetables, etc., come from the lower altitude coastal property of Cuixmala. So the whole operation is just fascinating. We go into that, and then I explain what it was like to set free baby sea turtles while I was there and how their rescue program works and why it's so important to the local ecology. Then we talk about the craziest thing that Alix has ever seen on the property, and she's seen some wild shit straight up, so you're going to really enjoy her stories. We could have gone on forever. Like, the history of this particular property and her fascinating life were just like endless. It's actually hard to kind of keep it down to an hour because there were just so many interesting things to talk about. We get into Alix's 3 natural childbirths, 2 of which took place on the Cuixmala property. And one of those birthed children was actually in the car with us when we crashed in Costa Rica as well. So that's how that relationship started. Then we get into a psychological and spiritual perspective on farming and the cycle of life as it pertains to choosing whether or not you eat animals or plants or both. Alix's journey with plant medicine, or her many journeys, I should say, and the most outlandish request that Alix has ever gotten from her famous hotel guests over the years. And finally, why Alix is motivated to contribute and create a positive impact on the planet, even though she doesn't necessarily need to financially. And finding out what drives her and her commitment to these properties and all of the amazing things that they do there is a really great way to wrap up this interview. Before we get into that, let's talk about next week's show, which was also incidentally recorded abroad, this one in London. It's called Psychological Fitness, Mastering the Mind, Ego, and Emotions with Dr. Mark Atkinson. And I got to say, sitting down with Dr. Mark was one of the most profound experiences I've ever had. I mean, it was deep. So I don't want you to miss that next week. Subscribe to the show so each and every episode of The Lifestylist is magically uploaded or downloaded, whichever it is, to your device or computer. If you want to see some of the action at Cuixmala and Hacienda de San Antonio, you can follow me on Instagram. You can even see tons of videos that I took while I was there at the 2 properties if you go to my highlight reel called Travel. But you can also find tons of great photos in the feed that are going to give you a really great feel for what it was like there. Because during the interview, we're alluding to so many different elements of these properties, and it really leaves a lot to the imagination. So follow me on Instagram to get the behind the scenes look on the whole experience. And my Instagram is, of course, at Luke Story. And finally, don't forget to visit lukestory.com/store, where you will find the best of the best when it comes to health and wellness products, supplements, biohacking technologies, etc. That's lukestory.com/store. It's a great way to support your health, the show, as well as some of the coolest brands in the world that are really doing it right. Now let's take a trip into the inspiring and exhilarating world of Alix Goldsmith Marcaccini and Cuixmala. Alix, welcome to the Lifestylist Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Luke, and for being here in Cuixmala.
Oh, man. You guys listening to the show, I wish that I could have just, had a film crew following us around today. We just had the most fantastic lunch on a private beach, and the property that we're on is just absolutely stunning in so many ways. And it's been an incredible couple days here. But before we get into current time reality, I want to go back to our meeting because I think it was so fortuitous in many ways. So Alix and I were both at a retreat center called Rythmia, which I did a trilogy podcast called Welcome to the Jungle, my ayahuasca experience. And we met there, and I think we met in passing a couple times during the ceremonies and maybe said, hi, how are you? What's your name? Kind of thing. We didn't really have time to get to know one another. But on the 5th day, which was after 4 nights of ceremony, Alix and I were in a car with a local kid that was also a participant like us, but who lived at this town in Costa Rica, and he offered to take us to the beach. And we got about 200 yards out of the
one straight line, one curve.
Literally, you could have thrown a stone to how far we got down the road. And homeboy just God bless him if he ever hears this, all is forgiven. But he basically just stopped looking at the road and just drove off the side of the road, and the car flipped over. And
was totaled.
Yeah, and the car was totaled. And Alix, out of the 5 of us, there were 6 of us in the car, as well as her daughter, she was the most injured And we're laughing about it now, of course, because it was a few months ago and all is well, presumably. But what I thought was so interesting about that experience, Alix, and I'd like to just kind of go back there and give us your recount of it, because I thought it was astonishing that you were perhaps the most calm person out of everyone. Everyone's kind of crying and freaking out and shocked, and you're sitting there with a bloody foot and a creaked neck, just kind of like, just another day in Costa Rica.
I think I was probably shocked, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, maybe that was it, huh?
Yeah, and I had nausea.
You did?
Yeah, that's why they took me to the hospital.
Because I remember, I don't know, not to play the hero here, but I think I helped you get something to put your foot on. You know,
Absolutely.
I mean, just being the guy, you know, you try and provide, and you just seem so happy and calm. I thought, she must be all right.
It was still the after effects of the medicine.
Do you think that contributed to your calmness?
Probably.
What do you remember about that moment? Because I told the story on that past podcast, and people may have heard that if they've heard that episode. So what's your version of we're driving out of the property, then what happens?
Everything's beautiful. I'm saying to myself, wow, we're going to the beach. We've survived these 4 nights. I wasn't bashed too much. All good. And then I'm looking out of the window going, oh my God, am I going to spot a howler monkey? We are in Costa Rica. It is a white region. And then before I know it, I hear you screaming, brake! And then the car just tumbling. So I really wasn't expecting it. And was okay. You guys all slipped out of the windows, you thin little beings. And I was the last one stuck in the car. And of course, in my mind, I probably watched too many movies. I was going, oh my God, the car's going to explode. What's going to happen now? And I can't get out. I'm like a beach whale in the middle of all this broken glass everywhere. And then the 2 guys came by on the motorcycle, and they're like, oh my God, we got to get them out. And then but they couldn't open the door because it was down. So the road was blocking the entrance of the door. And so anyhow, they're really skinny guys. One's pushing the car, the other one's trying to open the door to them. I can tell you, I love those 2. And so that was it really. And it's just good to know everyone else was out and we were all okay. And I guess the mum came out of me too, probably, because I was the oldest. And
right. Yeah. I bet that was part of it too.
Yeah.
You had that matronly, like, is everyone okay? Meanwhile, your foot's gushing blood. I think you were the only one actually bleeding, if I recall.
Yeah.
And so, unfortunately for you, they offered to take me I went to see the medic, and they said, well, do you need to go to the hospital? I said, how far away is it? And they said, 2 hours. I'm like, I think I'm good. And I was like, I'm not going to go sit in the back of a truck, and drive through the jungle. But you, in fact, both of you went to the hospital and got checked out.
And I was in that horrible straight metal thing with a thing for your neck, the big thing for your neck.
Oh, God.
And so I'm lower down, and every time a car's coming to brake behind us, I feel like he's going to come and break into the car. So I'm like hyperventilating for the 2 hours to the hospital.
And after that, did you, from what I understand, you sustained you had a bit of a hard time after that for a while too.
Yeah, for 2-3 months was a bit rough, but it's all good now.
Are you recovered from that?
Yeah, I'm okay now.
Psychologically, you seem recovered, because we were just in your truck and you were driving like a bat out of hell through the jungle here. You seem quite fine with automotive travel.
I do know the road by heart, but yeah.
Well, you know what's funny is after I've flipped a couple, I've been in a few accidents, not for a long time, but after that, and I have to say, even though I wasn't terribly bothered by that, I think maybe I was still kind of reeling from the ayahuasca ceremonies and thought, you know what, I've already died for 4 nights. What's a 5th day going to do? But I was a little skittish going around corners and stuff. I still sometimes, I'm like, slow down, because that's what happened. He went around a corner, and then, when the road turned, our lovely driver did not turn. And so it's kind of a key element to driving, right? When the road turns, that means you do something with the steering wheel. But anyway, I was a little sketched out after that, just in terms of like curvy roads.
Yeah, me too. For the first month and a half, I was really scared in cars.
Yeah. So anyway, to carry on with the story here, Guy, I sometimes forget there's people listening. I'm supposed to get to some kind of point. But then when we got to know one another a little bit, I think after that, when you had come back and then we were on the same plane right on the way back and et cetera, and talking to you and your daughter, you had mentioned to me, you said, you seem like a nice chap. I have this little hotel in Mexico, you should come down sometime. And I really remember thinking, that's sweet. She probably has some little thatched huts on the beach, somewhere. Or, I thought it was probably just I don't know why in my mind I pictured some really modest little, tiny little family-run hotel. And I thought it's really sweet of her. But, I thought, that's nice. Maybe I will. I'll look her up someday and go down there. And then you said you lived in Ojai, which is a place I like to go. And now my girlfriend, fortunately, lives there. So I spent some time. Anyway, lo and behold, we run into you in Ojai one day. And I don't even think I knew your last name at that point. But somehow I figured out what your hotel was down here, Cuixmala. I look it up and I'm like, wow, this is one of the 8 wonders of the world. Like, this place is freaking insane. And now here we are, so it just goes to show you just never know. There are those type of people that kind of overstate their stature or position in the world. And then there are some people, I think, that are perhaps a little more accustomed to it and it becomes quite understated, as was the case with you.
Thank you.
So here we end up at this fantastic property where I've spent the past couple of days eating not just organic, biodynamic food from the farm here, which I visited today, and going to yoga classes with Michaela here, who's sitting in the room silently as our third silent partner guest. And it's just an incredible operation here, ecologically speaking, in terms of what's going on with the community here at this part in Mexico. And so there's just so many things I want to talk about and bring people into. But starting at the beginning, so Cuixmala, which means the soul's resting place, was originally a private home built by and for your father,
yes,
Sir James Goldsmith. Can you tell us a little bit about, the origins of your dad, what he was all about, what he was known for, how he ended up acquiring this property, and perhaps kind of a bit of the history there?
My father was probably one of the most incredible businessmen from the 90s, 80s, 90s in Europe. And he also came to America. And he was one of the takeover guys. But before that, he'd been in many different industries. He'd been a banker. He'd been in the food industry. He'd been in the pharmacological companies. And so at one point, after being in all these businesses and seeing the negative effects on the planet, and thanks to his brother, who was a great ecologist, he started gearing his life and his energy towards ecology.
That's so rare.
So that's how we got here, basically, because he wanted a place which was close to America, but which had clean air, clean food, clean soil. And so he got everything tested here before we bought the land.
And he did?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
To make sure that they hadn't done nuclear testing over the hill or something.
Yeah, exactly. You never know.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. So he's this business mogul. When you were growing up, what was your life like? Were you, living this international jet setting sort of life as a kid? Did you live in a bubble that was unlike other kids?
Not at all, actually, because he started off dead broke.
Really?
Yeah. So just until I was born, he was actually playing backgammon and running, to make money to be able to make ends meet, and on all his crazy projects. And he went broke 20 times before making it. And then it's from when I was born that he started becoming more and more successful in what he was doing and all his projects.
Oh, that's so interesting. I find it fascinating that many of the world's historically most prolific and successful entrepreneurs share the experience of, quote, end quotes, failing a number of times before they make it. I've only tried 2 things so far at 48, and I think they both kind of working. I don't, have.
Well, you're lucky.
I don't have 30,000. Yeah, I don't have 30,000 acres of prime real estate in Mexico, but I always try to remind myself of that when I get afraid of failing at something. That so many of the people, at least in terms of worldly success and success in business, they just keep trying and trying and trying, and even if they get knocked down.
Everything
he did.
Every time he put every home, everything he owned went into every business deal.
Really,
he was a real gambler, and he was a gambler. He had clubs in England.
Oh, he did?
With John Aspinall, yes.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
And so he started to amass his wealth and build his portfolio and business as you started to grow up. So it was very exciting. It was really thrilling.
I mean, we went from the little apartment to a nicer apartment to a beautiful house. And it was very exciting to be part of it. And at every meal, hear all the projects he had and his likes and dislikes for people. I mean, he was very, very passionate. So it was always very interesting. And he'd always read, for example, 5 books on the same subject at the same time.
Really?
So he would really, historically, So it was fantastic. It was like having a class, and a fun one during a meal.
When you were a kid, when did you become aware of his affinity and interest in ecology and environmental issues and finding a clean place to live, etc.?
Funny enough, it was always something in our conversations because of my uncle. He started the magazine The Ecologist in the 60s.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, and it's all over the world now.
That's his brother?
Yeah, Teddy Goldsmith. And so they always used to argue a lot at the beginning. Of course, my uncle was very, very green from day one. And then I think it's really in the 80s that he really became conscientious. But having said that, he used to back red groups in Europe because they were the only ones who were ecologists at the time.
Oh, that's interesting.
But that was always kept under the cover.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I found that in the papers and stuff.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Interesting. Red groups meaning like communist groups?
Yeah, just because they were the only ones who were interested in ecology.
Right.
Just those projects. Huh?
Yeah.
He was on the other side politically.
Not overthrowing the governments of the Western world.
No.
Yeah, that's a plus.
Well, I'm sure he'd have to do that today, but anyhow.
So one thing about your pop, too, is that he was quite infamous for his adversarial relationship with the press. What was it about the press that he hated so much? And why were they hard on him? Which I'm assuming they were.
I think because the press, you always thought they were leftist and he wasn't. Mm-hmm. And also because you just didn't trust them. You'd give one interview and then something else would be printed. And he had a huge legal action with Private Eye, this English magazine in the 80s, which I can't remember all the details, but it really spiraled.
And he also was somewhat famous for having quite a few wives and mistresses and living a pretty, the life of a playboy, as it were, no?
Well, yes and no, because he was an incredible family man. I mean, he liked women, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But as a father, I think he was actually really as present as he could be, considering how busy he was. I mean, he was pretty incredible in that sense with all the children.
Yeah.
And I don't think he ever treated any of the wives differently, had he divorced or not. I mean, he was incredible that way.
So would you say he just kind of danced to his own tune in terms of social norms?
Yes.
Whereas like from the outside, the press or someone might say, oh, this guy's a bad man. He's had 3 wives, but the mistress lives in the guest house. What the hell is this?
But actually they're all living very happily.
Well, that's what
they're there because they want to be. No one was twisting their arm.
Right. That's what I hear.
And one day, a journalist asked him, what does it take to be able to keep 3 women and 3 families? And he answered, a lot of money.
So at what point then did he acquire this property, and what was it like?
In 87.
In 87. And so how old would you have been at that time?
How old was I? I was 23.
Oh, okay. So you're already grown by that time.
Yeah.
And do you remember the first time coming here?
I was the first one to come here.
Really?
Yeah.
And did you think your dad,
I was blown away. I was like, oh my God, I can't wait to.
So you were excited. You weren't like, oh, my dad's got off the deep end here. He's trying to start a nature preserve in Mexico.
No, I was super excited. Are you kidding?
And what was it like when you came to the property? I mean, was it just
it was just me and a gentleman who was buying land for him. And, we haven't found it yet until we arrived here. And there was less farming than there. I mean, but coconut trees were all there, but not all the plantations underneath, if you see what I mean. Like today you drove by, you saw orange trees, lemons, citrus, grapefruit, all the different types. In those days, it wasn't as much. I think we exploited the land in a nice way, much more than it had been before. And then first, when my father was alive, all the vegetable gardens were organic, and then we pushed them to biodynamic probably 7-8 years ago. We went to Colima, to the university, and followed some courses with this genius German biodynamic professor called Ferdinand von Druska. I hope he's listening.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Is he like the Mac Daddy of biodynamic farming?
Yeah, he's one of them, and he has.
Is he?
Yes, and really interesting, very, very funny man. And so he came down here and brought some people, and then we started the whole
So
project.
when your dad was here and he started growing organically, I mean, this would have been in the late 80s to early 90s then.
Yeah,
I mean, that was a pretty fringe idea at that time.
He'd been in the food business, remember?
Right. So,
and he was ill also, so he knew that you needed clean food to be healthy.
What ailed him?
Pancreatic cancer.
Really?
Yeah.
By the time he had this property?
He was already ill, but yeah.
Ah, interesting. And so he had been, like you were saying, he had been, in business in these other industries, the food industry being one of them. And I think you mentioned to me earlier, he was selling diet biscuits and things like that.
Yeah.
So he figured out at some point, like, wow, I'm selling shite to people here. And now I am sick. So I'm going to go and find a way to produce food that heals rather than harms. Would you say that was kind of part of the mission?
The food business was such a long time ago, though. It was like literally in the 70s.
Okay.
So I don't know, maybe in his mind, I don't know about that side, but he really knew he needed clean food to be able to survive his illness, that's for sure. And he survived a long time. It was a miracle case.
Wow. Because he lived until 97?
Yeah. And usually you have 6 months.
Right. That's one of the worst ones, is it not?
Yeah.
At least for men?
Yeah.
And so, interesting history with this property. Your dad had guests like Richard Nixon, Henry Kissinger, Ronald Reagan. I mean, these guys, which I know you're kind of she's wincing here, guys. We're not doing video on this, but those are things that, is like the press would say, wow, this guy was a really big deal. But from what you've told me, he really kind of danced to his own tune. And although he hobnobbed with some of these big power players, that he was not necessarily on the same page.
He was definitely a free spirit, and no one was going to pin him down.
Right.
That's for sure.
Right.
But he liked the information. He liked the conversation.
So what kind of meetings of the minds would take place here then with these historical figures in your dad? Was it a bit of a think tank where he would bring these great minds and leaders of different industry and movements here?
He had think tanks. He even had one which was was based on violence in the intercities of Latin America, very fitting. And I remember he did that at the Hacienda for a whole group of different people, professors, business people, and they all met in journalists, and they all had a think tank up there. And I think with them, it was more talking one-on-one. Apparently Nixon was very uncomfortable around women, so we were never allowed to be around.
Really?
Yes.
That's interesting. So you don't remember?
No, and also I think Daddy didn't want any of the small, boring talk. He just wanted to get to the nitty-gritty.
Right. Was he like kind of a no-nonsense guy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who? Which one?
Your dad.
Yeah, but fun, very fun.
Yeah. And so what kind of, I find the historical aspect of your dad so interesting, that he have his own 747 that he had outfitted, custom outfitted.
Yes, it was pretty incredible.
Were you on that when you were a kid?
I was on that. No, not when I was a kid, later on.
Oh yeah, because you were later on when you were in your 20s.
When I was in my 30s.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And so tell me a little bit about the development of the property here. And for those of you listening, you're going to have to go to the blog post here because I'm going to post a bunch of pictures from my trip. And, when I say that this is just an otherworldly property, it's not overstating it at all. It's just absolutely incredible architecture, and the lay of the land here is just absolutely insane. So how did the actual buildings come to be here in the beginning?
Some of the buildings already existed, but he really knew what he wanted. He was incredibly hands-on. He'd be there with the chalk with the guys. I mean, he was always choosing the paint colors. I mean, he was there everywhere. And he worked with Robert Couturier, who was only 23 at the time, which was pretty amazing, a young architect. And they drew Casa-Cuixmala, the house you're staying in, and Casa la Playa, and another two of the houses and the stables, which were pretty beautiful.
The house I'm staying in feels, there was some storms here in the past couple of days, and not hurricanes by any stretch, but you could see how a hurricane could quickly develop here.
Yeah,
I feel like the house I'm staying in has walls 4 feet thick. What's it made of?
Huge stones.
Right?
It's like a medieval building, Neddy.
So is there stone within the concrete?
Yes.
Is there steel like rebar?
But there's a lot of huge stones on stones on. So I don't know what goes exactly in the middle, but I can tell you there's a thick.
It's a very substantial feeling building. So much so, to my great surprise, no cell service comes in through the walls. You can see a cell tower kind of off in the distance. I'm so paranoid of them. Well, everyone knows the story that listens to my podcast. It's probably getting old, but I found out I was living next to a couple, and it made me really sick. So whenever I go anywhere, I'm like, oh God, where's the cell tower? And I saw one. I was like, shit, it doesn't even matter. These walls are so thick there. It's like a Faraday cage being in this. I don't even want to call it a hotel. I just call it a property. It feels like...
it is a property.
It feels very homey here. That's the thing. It does there's nothing here that says hotel. I feel like I'm like in your family house, basically. A gigantic one. But yeah, very friendly staff and just amazing buildings. So I was curious just about the architecture element, because it's not only beautiful, but it just feels so sound. Every building you're in is just like, God, you feel so safe and secure from the elements. What about the aspect here of protecting this land? That's kind of the thing I wanted to get into next. And I definitely want to talk a bit deeper about the difference between organic and biodynamic and the things going on at the farm, which I saw today, which was absolutely insane. So what's the Cuixmala Ecological Foundation, and how did the protecting the land kind of come in once you took over?
That even came along before my father bought.
He was really?
Already working on that, yes, on protecting and on doing the foundation. And as you know, there's still jaguar, puma, ocelots, 270 species of birds, white-tailed deer, wild boar. I mean, there's just 2,000 different amphibians, and I mean, it really is a paradise for animal lovers. And so the idea was to protect more and more land for them, because a jaguar needs 22 square meter just for one male.
Wow.
So it's very important. The more land you have, the more you can protect.
Right.
I mean, obviously compared to foundations in Argentina, we're tiny, or in Africa, but for Mexico, it's quite big.
Is there a lot of land in Mexico that's preserved in that way?
There's only another. We were the first independent foundation in Mexico. So I think there's 2 or 3 others now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Has it been difficult at times to, maintain that status and to really protect the land?
No, thank God we had a really good status, and no, I think it's all been quite smooth.
And what is does this have something to do with UNESCO?
Yes, the MAB UNESCO, absolutely.
Ah, okay. And so they're involved in also overseeing the...
Well, let's see if we have an issue. I know they'd protect us.
I see. Oh, okay, cool.
Yes.
So that's kind of like Big Brother that's waiting there, in a good sense.
Yes.
Big Brother that's there in case...
And they protect the mangroves, they protect water.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so last night we went and did something fascinating. We released some baby sea turtles. And so I was talking to the guys that work here and stuff like that. And I saw night watchmen out on the beach, because we could see the beach from the lovely room, and we see these guys with flashlights out there. And I thought, oh God, maybe those are poachers. And then the next day, no, that's us looking out for poachers and making sure that, the sea turtle eggs get where they're supposed to go. So we released these little baby turtles. They're like the size of, I don't know, a pack of cigarettes, maybe. And because I see one across the room, and that's about the same size. So we're turning these baby turtles loose. And the guy that's working there at the turtle sanctuary says, yeah, they're going to come back to this same spot in 12 years at about 30 pounds and lay their eggs right on this very beach. Tell me more about that.
That's why it's so important to protect every single beach, because there's different animals, different turtles who come to, no piece of nature is unimportant, if you see what I mean.
Right.
Yeah.
And how did the turtle piece come to be here?
The turtles were always here. And then when we realized they were coming to lay eggs here, we decided we had to protect them because the men were eating them. They were stealing them to make creams, which they used to sell everywhere. All the animals or predators were eating them. And then poor things, they were being smashed by these massive waves. So there's probably about, 5 turtles which survive out of 100, or 200.
Wow.
Yeah.
Isn't it fascinating that they're going to come back to the same beach?
Yeah.
When I found that out, I just thought, I think even the most ardent atheist would have to admit there's some divine order to things. Like, how in the hell is that even possible? It's so fascinating.
They have a great compass on them.
Can you believe? Yeah, it's like they're like prehistoric GPS.
Yeah.
And then we've got the crocodiles in the lagoons. There's all these lagoons. When I first saw one when we drove in, I thought, oh, I'm going to dive in that water. My girlfriend's like, I already know what you're thinking.
Don't think about
there's
it.
probably crocodiles. And sure enough, 10 feet later, there's like a massive 10-foot crocodile sitting there waiting for me, my hippie ass, to jump in the water. So
they're faster than a horse on 50 meters.
What?
And you have to zigzag because they can only see straight.
What? Wait. Back up. They're faster than a horse on a 50-meter sprint?
Yeah. When they get up, suddenly, they're like this on the ground. Yeah. And when they get up, their arms are very, very long. So,
whoa. And weren't you telling me that this, I mean, it's sad to bring up, but that you had lost a couple of dogs?
Yes.
As a result?
Little peanuts.
Oh, man.
Little aperitivos for the crocodiles.
And how did you learn of that? Is it an assumption, or were you around when it happened?
We know. And so many neighbors who lost their dogs to crocs.
That's just one of the things.
Just one of the things.
What's the craziest thing you've ever seen here in terms of the wildlife?
Yeah. Oh my God, I remember I was driving to the stables one day and I saw this huge wild boar, but massive. I've never seen a big one as big since. Jumped over one side of the lagoon, was about to hit the other side. It was halfway through air. And suddenly out of nowhere, this huge crocodile just came, opened his mouth, grabbed him, pulled him down. It was incredible. I felt like I was in Africa. You know what I mean? It was like, oh my God.
Oh my God.
Yeah. That
Wild.
was pretty awesome.
What else? Haven't you seen some of the big cats and stuff?
The big cats. I've seen the big cats roam around the garden. I mean, yeah, incredible. The puma, 2 jaguars as I was walking around one day with my dogs. But then he ran away. And then that evening, I think it was the same one because it was kind of in the same area. I saw him when I was driving and I put my foot on the accelerator to try and catch up with him, but he was out of there. But it was so exciting to see it.
I can imagine.
Right next to you. And he's like, as you're going faster, he's right next to you.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, it was
and
really
I love
cool.
the wildlife cams. You have those nighttime hidden, unobtrusive, for those environmentalists listening, they're like,
yes,
don't put cameras in the woods, but you can do it in a way that doesn't disrupt the environment. But you were showing me some photos today of the motion sensor cameras that catch wildlife. And you're like, well, I was just walking there. There's a freaking mountain lion was there last night, It's terrifying and exciting at the same time.
It's exciting. I think it's a blessing when you see one of those animals.
We'll be right back at you after this brief but important announcement. One of the coolest things about my job as the host of the Lifestylist podcast is always being on the cutting edge and not only finding out the best products when it comes to health, but the best companies that are making those products. Now, I'm someone that's been into bee products for a really long time. And if you heard episode 175 with Carly Stein, you got to hear me totally geek out on my obsession with bees and bee products. If you haven't heard that one, by the way, go back and check it out. That's 175. But what I didn't know about bee products is A, how many different products bees actually make in a hive, what their different uses are in terms of health support, and also that there are just a lot of companies that are making products that are very inferior. Either they're weak or they're not tested for pesticides and things like that. So the whole bee product game, I thought I was pretty on top of, and I got schooled in that episode, and now I'm going back and kind of re-educating myself, and I'm using all of the products from Beekeepers Naturals. So they've got a few that I'm really into. There's the propolis, which is kind of like the medicine of the hive. Then you've got, of course, the bee pollen, which is the food. That's the protein. It's actually the highest protein food on the planet, and it's also got free-forming amino acids. So it's great for pre-workout, for muscle recovery. And then, of course, the raw honey, which is amazing. And I thought I knew something about honey. It's got live enzymes. If you take a little bit before you go to bed, it helps you sleep. There's some things like that. But it turns out honey is a legit superfood if you get it from the right company. It's full of antioxidants, and it's just insanely powerful. Then you've got royal jelly. Now, royal jelly is the chronic stuff. That's the food that's exclusively made for the queen bee. So the queen bee lives about 40 times longer than the average worker bee. So put the math together there, and you'll know that royal jelly is some badass stuff. And if you want to try all of these products that the bees make in one, I'm going to recommend Bee Powered by Beekeepers Naturals. That's one of my favorites. Now, honestly, I go through it a little too fast. It comes in a jar, and I just pound that stuff. I probably way OD on it. You don't need to do it like I do it. You can savor it and make it last, but it's an amazing product and a really great way for you to get an introduction into all of the bee products in one jar. So go to beekeepersnaturals.com, use the code LifeStylist and save 15%. That's beekeepersnaturals.com, and the code is LifeStylist. If you're someone that wants to be healthy, chances are the reason you want to be healthy, if you really drill down, is because you want to be happy. Well, you know what makes you happy is getting melatonin in your veins at night. It's getting serotonin and dopamine in your brain during the day. Do you know what makes those neurotransmitters and hormones happen? It's light. And if you are exposed to artificial blue and green light after dark and even during the day, you're suppressing your ability to produce these within your body. I don't want to get too geeky and scientific because I would stumble over my words and you might not even understand what I'm talking about. But after over 3 years of interviewing experts, a couple hundred of them now, one of the underlying causes of all disorders and disease is artificial light at night. And if you just think about it from a common sense, nature-based point of view, we have not evolved to see this very narrow spectrum of blue light that exists in your LED lighting on your computer and probably inside your house, and headlights and street lights as you drive around at night. And anytime you go to the movies or a club or watch TV, anywhere you go at night, you're seeing a spectrum of light that doesn't exist in nature and that we haven't evolved to see. We've evolved to only see firelight and starlight and some moonlight at night. And so we've completely hijacked our bodies. We've become domesticated. And this is really, really harmful. Now, it's easy to fix. You can still live your life. Live your life. Go out, go clubbing, have a ball. But you just have to wear your Blue Blocks glasses. So go to blueblocks.com. That's spelled BLUBLOX, blueblocks.com. And get yourself some of these dope glasses. They have a few different frame styles. They do prescriptions, they do reading glasses, and they do non-prescription glasses that block the different spectrums of harmful blue and green light. So go to blueblocks.com, enter the code LifeStylist at checkout to save 15%. That's LifeStylist at blueblocks.com. And now back to the interview. So you started to spend some time here later in life, and you've got 4 kids now.
Yep.
You've got 4 pretty much grown kids,
2 were
right?
born in the house.
In this house where we are now?
Yeah.
And did I read right that you had your kids in a bathtub?
Yeah.
You had like natural childbirth?
Yeah.
What inspired you to do that, and what was that like?
I read a beautiful book called, what's it called? By Michel Audin, who's the biggest specialist on water births.
Really?
And the book is called The Scientification of Love, and it's the most beautiful book. And basically it explains to us that we should all be alone, crouching in the dark with 2 candles and no one around you, and everything goes well. And the more you have man coming in and meddling, but fiddling around the mother and the birth thing, and that's when the problems arise. You just have to be very concentrated and
were all 4 of your kids born natural childbirth?
3.
3.
One's a Cedars baby, my eldest guy.
I live right down the street from Cedars.
Yeah, she's a Cedars
Been there a few
baby.
times myself. So this is a topic that I've not covered in great depth on the show, natural childbirth, but it's something that really appeals to me. So is that person you just mentioned, this Michel person, still alive?
He must be quite old now. But,
it's a he?
It's a he.
Okay. Oh, French Michel.
French
right, okay.
Michel Audin. Beautiful book. You should get a copy. I mean, I recommend that book to any woman who's pregnant.
Well, I've always looked at things, I think, in what I think is a normal way, but is a bit skewed. So you take something like, we have a special distinction for organic food, right? To me, that's conventional food. Food that's sprayed with poison should be called something else, not conventional. There should not need to be something called organic, right? So It's just the way my head thinks. But when I drive by, all these hospitals, like in the middle of LA, you've got a hospital every 3 blocks, and I just think, God, that's just it's a big reverse ATM machine that's just there, just siphoning cash out of people's pockets. And why? Because we've domesticated ourselves and become so disconnected from nature, starting from birth in most cases, that we're locked into this kind of human zoology system. And now we're all so sick. We just are at the hospital all the time. So it's like almost you begin your life in a hospital. You live in self-imposed cages that we call homes and offices and buildings, et cetera. And then at the end of your life, you go back to where you came from.
It's awful.
Isn't it weird, though?
Yeah, it's awful.
To me, I just look at that and I'm like, there's something fucking wrong with this.
Yeah, I'm always quite happy when I hear that someone died at home.
Right.
You know?
Right. So did you sense that it was sort of, or was it just the book, or did you sense that it was sort of strange that we've, medicalized, we treat a pregnant woman as someone who's sick in a sense, right? Because it's like, oh, you have this illness called pregnancy and we're going to go treat that illness at a hospital.
And take the child away from you at birth? I mean, what are they thinking? Yeah, no. We, that was also not part of my father's way of life. If his wife could have had children at home, he would have been much happier. We never had vaccines. We never had any of that as children, no.
Wow. Interesting.
We weren't allowed to have x-rays.
Oh, shit. Your dad was woke.
Yeah, he was.
Oh, my God. That's especially back in the day. Now people are becoming more aware of some of these things, you know? So have your children adopted this natural way of living here? And do they like coming here? Have they gone through the stages where they're rebelling and like, I'm going to drink Diet Coke and eat McDonald's?
Oh, of course they have.
Yeah.
My son, to my horror, like 3 years ago, I went into the school because it was a day against Monsanto. So I barged into the school and I'm like, please, let's all look at Monsanto. And I want you all to paint a poster of what you think of Monsanto. And this was from 5-year-olds up to 14-year-olds. And then the next day, we all went up to march against Monsanto on the 25th of May in Colima, which is the local town near where we live. And so it was quite funny to see all these foreigners demonstrating, sin maíz no hay país. Without corn, there's no country. And of course, they didn't want it to be a GMO. So anyhow, it was all these people from the university. It was fun and wonderful to be there. I mean, I'm always happy to be part of that.
Well, I'm glad you are too. And how do the locals here view this place? Are they on board with it? Have you had anyone that doesn't understand what you're doing here in this natural way of living and promoting ecotourism and all of the positive things that are happening here?
I mean, most people who are joining the team, who have joined since the last 3-4 years, you really get it. And before it was just a bit of tweaking and explaining. And
right.
Yeah. At the beginning, it was quite complicated because all the farmers would grow all the bananas in blue plastic bags, like they do all over the world.
And how do they? Aren't they fumigated or something?
It's disgusting. They're fumigated. They put the blue plastic bag so they don't have any stains, any marks. There's no animals inside. Anyhow, they die with the pesticide. And that's what we get in Europe once they open the blue plastic bag and it goes to the supermarket. That's basically what you're eating. It's awful.
Is that true for organic bananas as well?
No, not for organic.
Oh, okay. But for conventional. Yeah. Again, conventional.
For all conventional fruits.
Right.
I mean, try a mango or papaya in Europe. It has a taste of plastic. It's absolutely disgusting.
Yeah, I've noticed the fruits that I've eaten here. I mean, I'm excited because I'm here and I'm caught up in the moment, but I want to say they're almost twice as flavorful as like even organic, an organic mango that you get imported from Mexico or wherever they're from in LA at Whole Foods or something. It's just a completely different energetic imprint. And of course, it's probably picked 3 days ago when you're eating it here. And the
soil is really clean. I mean, it's over 30 years. And they say it takes 5 years to clear out pesticides, but that's not true.
Right.
And it takes at least 10 years.
That's just for the organic certification, right? To get on paper that you can get that. But I've never gone for that either.
Yeah.
Because these pesticides are not biodegradable.
No.
Right?
No.
So 30 years here, there's not been any funny business in this soil.
No.
And what do I know that you've got a lot going on here, so knowing the exact nuances of biodynamic farming might not be your level of expertise, but when we went to the farm today, I was so excited because I've only seen this stuff on documentaries where they make the preparations with the ox horn and all this.
Did he show it to you?
Yeah, the whole thing.
Amazing,
this crazy,
amazing.
This voodoo, and those of you listening.
I look at it as white magic. That's why I love biodynamic. It's white magic.
So tell us, for those listening that have never even heard that word, give us whatever you can about kind of the difference between standard organic, which I don't even think is that healthy personally because you're still allowed to use all these weird fertilizers and NPK and all this shit. But give us what you know about the differences between biodynamic and how the process works.
Well, biodynamic, you really use all the calendar. You use the moon, the sun. It's the most nature-based farming, really. And I think it wasn't Rudolf Steiner even who invented it. He probably went around and asked all the old farmers, because basically they base... If you want to do one preparation, for example, the one with the horns, that is like the pesticide. I mean, the natural pesticide. And so they'll make it with all the barks of trees, which will come out during the full moon. Then in the third week, depending on the sun, they'll go and take a herb to mix it up. I mean, it's all very scientific, actually. I mean, they mustn't put the wrong herb in at the wrong time, et cetera, et cetera. So in that sense, that's what's really different with biodynamic and just organic.
And there seems to be a lot of emphasis on the health of the soil, too.
Oh, yeah, it's very important. The health of the soil. And again, the moon's really important for the soil when they're planting. And the seeds also, they have to be clean.
Oh, right. You've got to have heirloom seeds to start with.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they've been adulterated. And no matter how you grow them, you're still getting like the raw materials are still whack and diluted.
Yeah.
If not mutated.
And I don't know if you saw at the vegetable garden, because we pushed it, now we're doing wormology with our biodynamic, is that we have all these rabbits. And thanks to these beautiful rabbits in these beautiful bamboo cages who have fed these amazing biodynamic plants and herbs all day. And when they poop, it goes down to feed the worms. And so the worms double the sizes of any worms I've seen anywhere. And the soil is incredibly
fertile.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes. I was hoping that was the word. I'm like, I think that was the one floating in the ethers here. Yeah, I thought the biodynamic bunnies were fascinating because at first when we walked up to the farm, I was like, oh, poor bunnies. They're probably going to be dinner tonight.
No.
And I asked them, they're like, no, we don't touch those bunnies.
No.
And they didn't look very meaty, to be honest. They're kind of scrawny and tall variety.
They're beautiful, right? Big ears.
Yeah, they have really long legs. They're thin. They're very agile. And so, yeah, I saw this whole process of them making their little droppings. They fall through the cracks of this thing into the compost. A very fascinating whole thing. And the gentleman down there Lalo. Yeah, Lalo. You guys, I did do some video on Lalo will be in the Lifestylist Podcast Facebook group. We did some sort of, Michaela here translated some of his, dropping wisdom on the biodynamics. He's obsessed and like very knowledgeable. Yeah, he's amazing. But he was explaining how when they make these preparations, the 500 and then the 501, which is all these different minerals and, as you said, different plant matter that they mix up. And they have
crystals inside.
Yeah,
it's
like
amazing.
Ground quartz.
Yeah.
And they're buried at a certain time of year. Then in a few
9 months later.
Is that what it is? 9 months?
Yeah. And water has to always be able to go through the horns. I don't know if he told you
what?
That. Water has to leak through the horns for the 9 months. It has to keep it clean, I think.
Oh my God. So there's like an what do you call the ingestation period? Is that a word?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. And when you take it out, that's when it's really white magic because everyone's so excited. And then when they take the animal head out of the water, there's always an image there and it's always different. They see it.
Whoa.
So bizarre, right?
And then so the contents of these preparations are then put in these big vats of water to make the liquid preparation, right?
Yes.
And they'll actually vortex the water again like it would be in nature.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Do they do it 30 minutes one direction, 30 minutes the other direction, I think he said?
Yes.
Yeah, it's very interesting. But if you think about how water moves in nature, it never just sits there. If it does, the water goes stagnant and essentially energetically dies, right?
Yeah.
It dries up. So it's really fascinating. He was saying that then they'll go around with those little pesticide backpacks, but instead of pesticides, you have this amazing, cosmic juice that they've been, incubating all these months, and they spray that.
And you know what's so beautiful about biodynamic is before spraying your place, you have to spray the neighbors all around. So you have to give before receiving.
Really?
Yeah.
Why is that? Karmically, or is there like
karmically, I guess.
Oh, interesting.
So you're supposed to spray all around, and then you spray your own land. Yeah.
Wow, that's fascinating. So when I'm eating the food here, and anyone that's a regular listener knows I'm not really a foodie. I don't really get food. It's like, whatever, just give me some hamburger, I'm done. Like, I just want to get full and move on with life. But the food here is so goddamn good. I'm like, every meal I'm freaking out. And I think that's because it's there's a couple things, but the biodynamic, the great culinary, skills and recipes of the staff. But I think there's really something to eating like very locally and very fresh. So the food that I'm eating here is grown right down the road, or in the case of the fish, is caught locally in the sea.
And the meat comes from our ranch. And so we never use antibiotics. The babies stay with their mothers as long as they need the milk. I mean, we really try and do
This is at the hacienda.
Yeah, this is the hacienda. So you'll see the whole process, but we really try and make it the most, humanly possible for them.
Right.
Yeah, so they have really good lives. And you have to go and see the pig style. I'm so proud of the house. I mean, they live at the Ritz, those guys.
Really?
So, yeah.
Up at the hacienda?
Oh, it's beautiful. Now we did beautiful bamboo. I mean, like a Balinese house, okay?
Oh, wow.
Then they each have their area, and then they have a green grass, and they have the river going at the end, so they can go and roll in the water, be clean, go in the grass, go back into their little house.
And so the bacon that I've been eating for breakfast comes from the hacienda.
It's very happy bacon.
Yeah, it's very delicious too,
Yes.
I have to say.
Yes.
I used to be a vegetarian, as we were talking about earlier, and I really struggled with the sort of morality of that. And it's too long of a conversation to explain how I overcame it. But have you ever in your life experimented with being plant-based or vegan, vegetarian? Have you wrestled at all?
Not long enough, but I really enjoyed it. If I lived alone or with my daughters, with no males around, I could probably cut off meat.
Right.
But the males bring the meat into the house, so I go back to the meat. But I love being vegetarian or vegan. I feel really well too. Yeah.
And what's your view of sort of having these farms? What's your view of the cycle of life and where those beautiful pigs that have this great life then become breakfast? How do you view that in terms of psychologically, spiritually?
I can't say I really like it, but at least they've had an amazing life and we give them the gentlest death possible.
Right. Well, I've actually interviewed farmers, one in particular that has a ranch in near Shasta called Belcampo, and that's where I eat most of my meat. And I went there and I had not been a vegetarian for a while, but I really wanted to see where my meat came from and just see if I could really, soul search a bit and see if I was down with, I went to the slaughterhouse and the whole thing, right? And it was very interesting looking at, it wasn't biodynamic, but definitely organic, and all these rotating crops and rotating all the animals, and sort of just
we always do that.
Having the observation that in nature, whether it's on in a contained area like a farm or not, everything's eating everything all the time.
Yes,
it's kind of just the way.
That's true.
Just the way nature is. And if I keel over when we walk out of this damn office right now, and you just left me there, I'm going to be eaten by something, and then something's going to eat it. Something's going to eat it, and it, and it. And it was one of the ways that I managed to sort of find peace with that circular aspect of life. Because I really had a hard time with that for a while.
So I met a Buddhist monk, and he was very amusing because he kept on saying, you can have a bit of meat. They all eat meat. They can't kill the animal, but they can eat it. But what was interesting, he said, you shouldn't eat shrimp, because to have a proper meal of shrimp, you got like about 10 shrimps. So you got 10 karmas with 10 shrimp.
Oh, no way. I just had about 10 shrimp for lunch down on your beach. It was amazing. No. Speaking of Buddhists, I'd like to get into a little bit more of your spirituality, because I sense that about you when we met at Rythmia. We're in this car crash and you seem pretty chill about it. Sure, maybe you were in shock, but you do have a light in your eye that indicates to me that you're familiar with the realms other than the corporal ones. And so I noticed that at the beautiful yoga studio that there's a Buddhist little, what is it called? A stupa?
A stupa.
A stupa. Yeah, a little stupa there. And you said, oh yeah, we have this Buddhist monk who comes here. Tell me a little bit about that and the influence that it's had on the property or your life.
He started coming 5 years ago, I think. And first we started heating the land and going everywhere, to the river, to all different areas on the property. And then he thought a stupa would be very good just to canalize all the energy on the property. And actually, since he's built it and finished it, the energy is extraordinary. I mean, it's changed. It was never bad, but it's just, I don't know what it's done, but it's really changed something here for the better.
That's great.
Yeah.
It also looks beautiful.
Yeah.
And in terms of your own pursuit, because you seem like someone who's seeking truth and, harmony in your life. What are some things that have been useful to you in terms of your own happiness and well-being and finding meaning and purpose?
When people ask me what my addictions are, I always put heaters.
I know the feeling.
I'm a heater sucker.
Yeah.
You're a heater. I'm yours. So anyhow, I just love going and trying new therapies and new heating or old heating techniques that I didn't know about. And yeah.
What are some of the things you've tried that have been most impactful, would you say?
I've done so many, but they don't really have a name because these people just come to you and do their own technique. But just in Ibiza, I was there this July and I probably had 2-3 sessions a day in different areas of the island. I was so excited. So I'm ashamed I can't really say the name of the technique, but it was very interesting.
Yeah. And then
all of them, actually.
And then what about your exploration into psychedelics? Other than Rythmia, how much has that had an impact on you?
Well, tell you the truth, I've only taken plant medicine 4 or 5 times.
Oh, I see.
But it did change a lot. I find the result extraordinary of the changes it helps you go through.
And what were your takeaways after the Rythmia experience, for example? Did you see in what ways?
Sleep for 3 months. I was in pain.
No, aside from that.
No. It really, that time was to follow my intuition. And I had so many examples pop up, like, why did I not do that? Why did I do this? And when I knew in me that what I was supposed to do. So in that way, I'm very grateful to it.
So honoring that inner authority, that intuition.
Yes.
Yeah.
Except for starting smoking again. Yes.
Oh, so I can tell people that was your pack of cigarettes I was referencing earlier.
Yes, sadly, yes.
It's funny. I think you're the first guest that I've ever interviewed that's smoking a cigarette, and it kind of makes me want one again. It's the best. It's the best. Well, this podcast is about keeping it real too, which is great. So yeah. I wish we could hear like, there's someone, I know what my favorite spiritual teacher, David Hawkins, anyway, amazing guy. He was out of Sedona toward the end of his life, but on some of his recordings, he did like those Nightingale Conant, I think they're called, like these audiobooks, And he did a lot of live lectures, and I've listened to a lot of those. And then I get a hold of these ones that recorded in the studio. And he says, well, the grace of God is the spiritual power of the da-da-da. And you hear, and I was like, fucking cool, man. I like this guy even more. He's a smoker. Then after he died, I found out he smoked like 3 packs of cigarettes. He lived into his late 80s. And he's like, this spiritual teacher who just enjoyed smoking cigarettes. I thought that was so cool.
Oh, one of the guys I met who I thought was amazing was Bobby Klein. Have you
No.
heard of him? Bobby Klein, he does the I Ching every Sunday, and he has this amazing center in Tulum and in New York. And he does sessions one-on-one. Very interesting.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, cool. The I Ching. Is that where they toss the cards or something?
It's the white little Chinese. I'll send you his link.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the other thing. You living in Ojai, I think is interesting. And when did you move there and why? What attracted you to that place?
I moved there 4 years ago for schooling. And I just love the idea that it was a small village, little town where the kids could still have normal lives and didn't need 10 phones on them and trackers to know where they were.
Right.
And it's all farmland and it's just wonderful up there.
And what about your kids here? How did the school here come to be? Did that have something to do with having your kids here?
It started, when did it start? Just before the first hurricane, 2011. We had it ready 5 days before this huge hurricane. It opened and it just like,
no way.
It shaved it was very sad. But anyhow, the school was an incredible adventure. We were 6 friends who'd never had an exam. We were total renegades. We all hated anything to do with authority and education. And we all wanted to create our dream school for our kids, the school we would have liked to have had. So for 8 months, we watched and read every book, every documentary on all the different systems. And we made our mishmash at the time.
Really?
And actually it opened with 7 kids. It was crazy. Each on a different, because they're all different nationality. Each was, English, French, Spanish, Italian. It was nuts. And then we brought it down to English, French, and Spanish, obviously. And it's continued since.
And who does the school serve now, and how many kids are here?
Right now, I think there are 25 of them, and local kids, people who work for us, have their children there, and also foreigners, expats who are in the area.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah,
really
that's
nice.
it. Really, it does. You get the sense here that it's very sort of self-supporting, self-sustained thing. When I found out about the school and there's an airstrip for a plane, I was like, this is like its own little country. You really could just kind of like shut the gates and be like, we're chilling here, guys. If the shit hits the fan and there's Armageddon, as long as your loved ones are around, you can kind of just like, we're done.
I remember this badge, Frank Sinatra, which said, it's Frank's world. We just live in it. And I gave one to my dad. It's Jimmy's world. We just live in it.
Oh, cool. That's amazing.
Yeah. But we opened the school after he passed.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
That's great. And so were your kids all homeschooled apart from you getting them in school?
My two eldest were homeschooled.
Ah, interesting. Here. And what was that like? Was that...
I think my younger two probably had more fun in the school here than being homeschooled at the time.
Yeah.
Because there weren't that many kids around.
Right.
So.
And something you guys are putting some effort into now is really expanding into the health and wellness space a little bit. Because obviously, once one is here, this is the epitome of health and wellness. You've got yoga and everything we just described. It's about as natural of an environment as one could hope for. What plans do you have for the future of, having...
Well, my dream is to really bring the property into wellness and health now. And I mean, obviously, if we have people want to come and stay and have fun, fantastic. But if they also want to come and really learn how to heal, go to the vegetable garden, there's so many different things they can do here. Even if they want to go and learn how to do the essential oils in the hacienda, we make them ourselves. And so there's lots of ways that people can come and heal and do different things.
And have you had experiences here where you have speakers come in, or you've had a retreat or anything like that?
We did in the past on the soda lunar, on the indigenous, on the importance of the soda lunar, with Daniel Pinchbeck and Four Arrows, who's an amazing neighbor.
And don't you have a legendary New Year's party here?
Yes, we do. We do now. Yeah, I mean, it was. They were pretty wild. Now I guess I'm calmed down a bit. So it's up to my daughters. It's up to the kids to make them legendary.
Right. What's the strangest? You've had obviously like a zillion celebrities stay here, and you don't have to name names on who requested what. But as from the hotel aspect, what's like some of the craziest requests you've had from people that want some, outlandish service?
Yoga at 7 a.m.
I think my class was at 9, and I was like, "Can we make it 9:30?"
No, I also think once this person came who wanted to organize her wedding here. And it was very funny because we were on the beach with the wedding planner, and suddenly she says, "What about if we can cover all the sea with a plexiglass and we can dance on it?" And I'm like, "What?"
Perhaps.
And the sand, because, all the guests had to be in high heels, so we all had a little chuckle in the back, but that didn't happen.
Maybe lacking a fundamental understanding of physics, but great idea. Yeah. That's hilarious. Yeah. When I arrived here, I got the sense like, man, if walls could talk,
that's for sure.
You just imagine some of the interesting things that have transpired here.
Yes.
And so what's next on your journey as we come to a close here? I find something interesting about you is I'm just going to make an assumption here based on knowing that your dad managed to amass some cash in his lifetime. You probably don't really have to work anymore. You could just kind of hang out, but yet you're really involved in the property here. You're really involved in impact and helping the local communities, the environment. Why don't you just go sit on the beach and be a lazy ass? Like, what motivates you to now contribute and do the work that you're doing?
The only thing probably is if I could piss off and travel for months on end, but I have kids, I have a family, so I can't do that.
That's an honest answer. I was expecting like, well, Luke, I'm just wise and so giving and egalitarian.
No, but you know what? All the experiences and the different things I would see on these trips, I would bring back here to make the property even better. So anyways, my life is, I live and breathe this place. I wake up thinking of it, go to sleep thinking of it. There's so many different projects and layers and excitement, and creativity going on. So it's never ending, really.
And this is where you derive your passion and also
Absolutely.
a way that you can give back and help people have
Absolutely. And also maintain
experiences.
my father's legacy, really. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What do you think your dad would say now if he could see what you've done here?
I think he'd be really happy and just give me a little kick in the ass going, hey, get more clients in there.
Right. What's this empty cabana?
Yeah. Really?
You've got 3 empty villas? Seriously? We need to strategize.
Yes.
Well, that must feel really good, to kind of have a family legacy and to be able to carry on something and actually,
also,
carry
I
the
really
torch.
want to be able to pass it on to my kids and not as a white elephant.
Right. Right. How do your kids? I mean,
I know one of my kids will take over.
Think so?
Yeah, I know which one it is.
You
I won't
do?
say it now,
Okay.
but I
Okay.
think I know which one it is.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've wondered that. If you do have a family where there's a bit of a legacy and you procreate, and then what happens when your kids grow up and they're all like, we don't care about the shoe factory or whatever you've built. You know what I mean? It's like that sucks. Then it has to be sold off, to some the highest bidder, and it's like you lose that.
Now, here what's great is that they all four have very different interests, and they all four bring their interests here to the property. So Leia wants to do an artist in residence. Gaia does animations, so she wants to be able to, have a little studio. And Leia also is a stylist, so she helps take care of all the photo shoots. And Sienna's been in charge of the stable since she's 8.
Really?
Since she's 8, she's amazing. And
Wow.
And Giacomo, I don't know yet. Right now, he's obsessed with sports, but hopefully something.
Well, I
will
saw an
bring him
amazing
here.
soccer field, probably the nicest soccer field I've ever seen in the country of Mexico.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Usually, no offense, but they're kind of dirt with some rocks and stuff. I was like, holy shit, that's a soccer
And a lot
field.
of trash.
Yeah, it actually has grass on it. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And all the different teams, it's the plumbers who play against the
Oh, no
electricians,
way.
against the guards, against the farmers. So it's quite fun.
That's amazing. Yeah, and it's funny. I saw Leia, who, listener, she was the one that was in the car accident with us. And she's running around here doing a photo shoot, and she's the stylist. And I was like, oh, I did that for years. I remember that. You've got the shoes in one hand and the dress under your arm, and, you're trying not to drag it in the mud and the whole thing. I was like, oh, I remember that hustle. And she's still, in the phase, and God bless her. I hope the phase lasts forever if that's her will. But, I was like, oh, I remember that. Yeah, the hustle of the creativity of producing shoots and things like that. It was really fun to see her really enjoying that. It's very cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I know they all are very attached to this place, which is great.
Oh, how could they not be? They would have to. You'd have to really get their head examined if they weren't honest. Of course, there is that thing though. Even if your parents do the coolest thing ever,
they're your parents.
Yeah, it's right. You're still like, I can remember now looking back on things my dad tried to share with me, hunting trips and fishing trips. And I was like, I want to ride my skateboard and listen to Zeppelin. This sucks. And now I'm like, God, I would love to go on a trip like that with my dad, and he's kind of chilled out a bit. And so that's really great that your kids are on board. There goes another.
I'm sorry, it's the French in me.
I love it. Well, that's funny. Something interesting, actually, when I met you and Leia at Rythmia, I couldn't quite place your accent. And I think she has what sounds like more of a British accent. I said, where are you from? She said, I'm from Mexico. And then you had kind of a French accent. Where are you from? I'm from the UK. I was like, what? You guys are confusing. I was like, I can't make any sense of any of you. Now it's all coming together.
That's why I call my eldest Gaia.
Oh.
Goddess of the earth.
That's great. Well, listen, I really, really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me. When I find interesting people around the world, it just brings me so much joy to share their life experience and wisdom with the listeners. And I'm just tickled pink that I get to do what I do. So thank you for taking the time to contribute. And thank you for the work you're doing here. It's so cool. I think that the idea of ecotourism is kind of a buzzword, and I'm glad that it's a trend, but I've never been anywhere that epitomizes that, like this particular location. It's just absolutely incredible from top to bottom. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
And I've learned a lot from you, as I'm sure I'll continue to over the next couple of days here. Who have been 3 teachers or teachings that have influenced you in your life and your work that people might be able to go look up and also learn from?
Well, my uncle, Edward Goldsmith, he wrote many books on ecology And the last one was, I think, 2,000 Days to Save the Planet, something like that.
Really?
And he died 10 years ago, so I think we're in trouble. I always used to tell him you should sell your magazine with a cord, a rope. And he was like, why? Because you can hang yourself after reading it.
Oh my God.
It was always such intense news.
Oh
and
my
then,
God.
I'm sorry, it's sounding very boring, but my dad, he wrote an extraordinary book called The Trap. And
what's that about?
It's about worldviews and economy and ecology, and it's just extraordinary. It's a very short book, and he wrote it in 1990, and everything which is in there, what he predicted is where we are today.
Really?
So it's pretty incredible.
I had no idea that he wrote that. I'm gonna have to check that out.
They were both called Cassandras, Teddy and my father.
Really?
For predicting.
Interesting.
Yes, and then I mean, there's so many books I've loved. But I mean, the teachings of the Dalai Lama aren't bad.
Right?
Yes.
That's great.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you for the recommendations.
Thank you. And Jane Goodall, obviously, my great hero.
Right. That's one thing the only animal I think that I haven't seen here and I don't think exists is there's no monkeys here.
No.
Which is odd.
But you got tejones, which are called coati mondis. And coatis look like monkeys, kind of. They're cuter.
Really?
Yeah, they look more like skunks, but pretty skunks.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I hope I see one of those.
Yeah, you'll see those.
What I hope I don't see is a rattlesnakes. Which is so weird. I didn't know.
You have those in Ojai. You don't have them
I know.
You don't have rattlesnakes.
But yeah,
you have boas.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, I thought when we were riding horses today, I could have sworn our guide was like, there's rattlesnakes out in that grass. And
You're right. There is a rattlesnake.
Are there?
I remember riding. There was a rattlesnake.
I thought,
You're
wow,
right.
I didn't know they existed in tropical places. Well, that's good. I'm glad you verified because he could have just been like, I'm going to scare the gringos. Here we go. Watch out for the rattlesnakes. Oh, Lord. All right. If you guys want to learn about this incredible property or even come here, you can find it at Cuixmala.com. That's Cuixmala, Cuixmala, which means, as I said, the soul's resting place. And it truly is. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Thank you so much. That was fun.
Okay, gracias por escuchar nuestro podcast, mi amigos. Much appreciated that you lent us your ears for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to catch us next Tuesday with Dr. Mark Atkinson, where we talk about psychological fitness. And finally, do yourself and me and everyone a favor and visit lukestory.com/store, where you will find not only our sponsors, Blue Blocks, Own to Wellness, and Beekeepers Naturals, but about 110 other great brands that are going to support you, your health, your happiness, longevity, etc. That's lukestory.com/store. And I'd like to take a moment to personally thank Alix and Michaela and Davis and the whole team, many of which I'm probably forgetting, at both properties, Cuixmala and Hacienda de San Antonio. Truly magical experience, and I'm not exaggerating, to go down and just see some businesses that are really doing things in a very conscious way. And not only in a conscious way, but just artistically, aesthetically, just the whole vibe of that trip was absolutely incredible. And it had been a long time since I visited Mexico. And was sort of, I don't know, witnessing the country of Mexico, having spent a lot of time there throughout my life many years ago, was kind of dangerous. And I think I'm thinking about more Tijuana. And I forget, when you get down further into Mexico, the cartels aren't everywhere. And it's actually a really lovely place still, which was a relief to find. And I've probably never felt so safe and protected in my whole life, despite the existence of cougars and alligators and all sorts of crazy-ass creatures on these properties. But no, seriously, it was a fantastic trip, and I encourage anyone that has an opportunity to get down to either one of these properties. I mean, it's just, there's no way to describe it. You just have to go. And so I'm looking forward to getting down there again. Spoiler alert, but we are talking about the possibility of doing some events or something in that capacity down south there in the future. So stay tuned for that. I'm really looking forward to sharing these properties with other people and, finding a way to get down there more myself and see what we can do. So stay tuned for any developments on that. And also, I just want to encourage everyone listening to support businesses that are really doing things in a conscious way ecologically. Now, I don't talk about a lot of activism on the show because it's not really my journey. There's a lot of great people out there doing great work. I'm not, classically speaking, involved in environmentalism and such. This show and what my life is about individual enlightenment and evolution. And as that pertains to endeavors that we each involve ourselves in the world, I think they're going to automatically and inherently be done consciously while serving the interest of everyone involved. And that means everyone involved on the whole planet. So while I'm not directly an activist myself per se, I do love to give props and attention and support to organizations, companies, brands that are doing things in a way that is based on service and based on serving not only the planet, but all of its inhabitants. And these properties and Alix and her team are no exception. So I look forward to doing more of these travel shows. I want to support anyone out there who has a company, property, or anything that's being supportive and conscious in this way. So super fun experience. Really amazing to be able to record a lot more of my podcast in different locations. I love to travel. It's sort of a gonzo journalism approach to podcasting, which I'm really enjoying. It's so much more fun than sitting in the studio in my house like I am right now recording this, speaking into a microphone, into a computer. It's a living, but it's quite drab in contrast to some of the amazing experiences I get to have when I travel with my little case of microphones and meet interesting people in interesting places and have the opportunity, for which I'm ever grateful, to share these conversations and in some cases different locations with you, the listener. So it's with deep gratitude and appreciation that I close this show, and I look forward to joining you again on Tuesday with Dr. Mark Atkinson. This episode of the Lifestylist Podcast was produced by podcastmasters.net.